In the world of institutional finance, there is an unwritten rule that almost never gets broken. You do not name the infrastructure you haven't chosen yet. Think about how banks operate. When JP Morgan evaluates a new settlement system, the evaluation is confidential. The technology partners are under NDA, the internal memos are sealed, and the chosen solution only gets named publicly after contracts are signed, after legal review is complete, after the decision is already made and irreversible. They do not name a candidate, they announce a winner. So, when SBI Holdings, one of Japan's most powerful financial conglomerates, controlling banking, FX, and remittance rails across the entire country, signed a formal memorandum of understanding this week, and that document named the XRP Ledger specifically, not blockchain technology, not distributed ledger infrastructure, but XRP Ledger by name as the candidate settlement engine for the Japan-South Korea payment corridor. The rule just broke. And when institutions break that rule in writing, with their legal teams, their boards, and their reputations attached, it means the decision is closer than any announcement will ever admit. Welcome back to the Market Map Crypto, where we read the architecture, not the headlines. This is not financial advice. Do your own research. But if you want to understand why this week's developments are structurally different from everything that came before them, not louder, different, then stay with me. This breakdown goes to the foundation. Let's start with the hard truth that most retail coverage refuses to tell you. The reason XRP's infrastructure story has been so easy to dismiss over the years is because the evidence was always directional. MOUs suggested intent. Partnerships suggested evaluation. Regulatory dialogue suggested progress. All of it pointed towards something, but none of it committed to something. That changed this week, and the mechanism that changed it is a document. SBI Holdings, Ripple Asia, and South Korea's DSRV Labs signed an MOU that does something no previous institutional document in this space has done at this scale. It puts the XRP Ledger's name inside a formal institutional evaluation for a live, high-volume, real economy payment corridor. Let me give you the geography of what that means. The Japan-South Korea payment corridor is not a niche channel. It is one of the highest volume cross-border payment routes in the entire Asia-Pacific region. Corporate settlements, trade finance flows, foreign exchange transactions. This corridor moves billions of dollars every single week between two of the world's most sophisticated financial economies. And the institutions that currently operate that corridor, the ones with the banking licenses, the FX infrastructure, the correspondent banking relationships on both sides, just told the world which rail they are evaluating to replace it with. Now understand what SBI Holdings actually is, because this is where most retail coverage completely loses the thread. SBI does not need to build new rails from scratch. They already have the distribution. They already have the FX relationships. They already have the banking infrastructure on both the Japanese and Korean sides of this corridor. When SBI evaluates a new settlement technology, they are not asking, can we build something around this? They are asking, can this replace something we already operate? And it requires a fundamentally different level of internal due diligence before a name goes into a document. And separately, running on a parallel track, Ripple and SBI VC Trade already hold their own MOU specifically covering RLUSD distribution in Japan under the country's revised Payment Services Act. A law that did not exist in a vacuum, a law shaped in part by regulatory dialogue that Ripple has been participating in for years. 2 tracks, 1 stack, XRP as the settlement bridge, RLUSD as the tokenized fiat layer riding on top, SBI's existing banking rails as the distribution engine. That is not a pilot program. That is a deployment template waiting for one final confirmation. Now let's run the math that the crowd consistently underweights, because the numbers this week are not what most people think they are. There are 3 figures circulating in the XRP community right now. I want to put all three in the correct context, because two of them are thought experiments, and one of them is the only number that actually matters. The first figure, $266. This comes from a calculation dividing a $16 trillion XRP market cap by approximately 60 billion circulating tokens. The arithmetic is clean. The requirement behind it, a 200x move from current market cap, surpassing Apple, surpassing gold's entire above-ground stock, is a scenario where the global financial system has largely settled on XRP infrastructure as its primary settlement rail. Not a price target, a thought experiment about a world that is fully built. The second figure, $750. A public bet recently doubled, requiring a market cap approaching $45 to $50 trillion by December 2026, roughly equivalent to the entire US stock market repriced in 9 months. I will let you draw your own conclusions about timeline. The third figure, and this is the only one I want you to actually sit with, is the underlying market that XRP is being evaluated to serve. Cross-border payments globally represent $150 trillion in annual notional flow. Embedded inside that system are an estimated $27 trillion in locked Nostro and Vostro accounts. Idle capital sitting dormant in correspondent banking chains, doing nothing except ensuring the plumbing doesn't fail. Capital that earns nothing. Capital that disappears the moment on-demand liquidity replaces it. XRP's entire engineering architecture was designed specifically to eliminate that $27 trillion problem. 3 to 5 second settlement instead of 2 to 3 business days. On-demand liquidity instead of pre-funded accounts. A bridge asset that does not require a direct yen-to-won relationship to exist before the transaction clears. Now place SBI's existing infrastructure on top of those mechanics and ask the question the institutions are already asking internally. If this works in the Japan-Korea corridor, what stops it from becoming the template for Japan-Philippines, Japan-Vietnam, Japan-Singapore? The answer is nothing. A live working reference case in one corridor is not a one-time deal. In institutional finance, it is a deployment blueprint. Every corridor that follows copies the architecture of the first one that proved it. The institutions signing their names to this MOU understand that, which is exactly why their legal teams let the name XRP Ledger go into the document. Now let's talk about the other developments this week, because the SBI MOU did not land in isolation. It landed inside a week where 5 separate institutional signals converge simultaneously. And that convergence is the part nobody is mapping correctly. Signal 1. On April 2nd, 2026, Coinbase received conditional approval from the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency to become a U.S. trust bank. The OCC does not issue trust bank charters to crypto-native companies. Until April 2nd, they never had. Coinbase just became the first. Why does this matter for XRP? Because Ripple has been pursuing that exact same charter. Not to operate as a bank, but in Ripple CEO Monica Long's own words, to ensure RLUSD is managed to the highest federal regulatory standards. Coinbase just proved the OCC will grant it. The argument that this pathway was closed just lost its last foundation. Signal 2, the credit rating. KBR just assigned a BBB issuer credit rating to Ripple Prime, the holding company sitting above Hidden Road Partners, an SEC-registered broker-dealer and CFTC-registered futures commission merchant, with CME clearing membership. A credit rating is not marketing. It is an independent, institutional credentialing process that involves audited financials, operational review, and legal assessment. BBB means investment grade. Investment grade means institutional capital can now flow into Ripple Prime structures without triggering compliance restrictions that block sub-investment grade exposure. Signal 3, SWIFT. Ripple Treasury just joined the SWIFT certified program. The same SWIFT organization whose former leadership spent years publicly dismissing XRP as irrelevant. They are now certifying Ripple's Treasury infrastructure. The narrative and the institutional reality are no longer pointing in the same direction. Signal 4. PNC Bank. PNC, a top 10 U.S. bank by assets, integrated Ripple Treasury directly into its banking infrastructure through Pinnacle Connect. When an institution that size builds a dependency on your platform, they are not experimenting. They are committing. Experiments get canceled. Dependencies get expanded. Ask yourself what a compliance department at any bank, pension fund, or sovereign wealth office thinks when they see SBI MOU, OCC charter pathway proven, BBB credit rating, SWIFT certification, and top 10 U.S. bank integration all in the same week. They do not think maybe, they think timeline. I want to stop here for a moment, because what we just walked through is not a collection of news items, it is a convergence map. And building that map from primary sources, from MOUs and credit ratings and OCC filings, instead of from Twitter threads and price charts, is exactly what this channel exists to do. If that is the level of analysis you want in your feed consistently, subscribe to the Market Map Crypto right now. Turn on notifications, because what comes next in this story moves faster than weekly recaps can keep up with. And I do not want you reading about it after the price has already moved. Let's be precise about the catalysts converging ahead, because the timeline here is not vague. Catalyst 1, the OCC charter decision for Ripple. Coinbase's conditional approval just established the template. Ripple's application is more structurally complete. Payments infrastructure, stablecoin, bridge asset, and now a BB rated holding company. The question is no longer if, but when. And the week that conditional approval arrives, RLUSD's institutional scalability changes category entirely. Catalyst 2, RLUSD Japan launch timeline. The SBI VC Trade MOU targets RLUSD distribution in Japan under the revised Payment Services Act. That legal lane is already open. The distribution infrastructure already exists through SBI's network. The launch date confirmation is the trigger that makes XRP Ledger's on-chain volume data visible in real time to every institutional analyst watching the space. When that number becomes public, the conversation shifts from evaluation to evidence. Catalyst 3, the Digital Asset Clarity Act. Senate markup sessions are imminent, with the commodity classification already codified by the SEC and CFTC jointly. Legislative clarity is the final structural piece that removes the last compliance hesitation for U.S. domiciled institutional allocators. Passage does not open a door, it removes a wall. Catalyst 4, the Japan-Korea corridor first settlement numbers. The MOU commits SBI and DSRV to evaluation. The first published settlement data from that corridor, when XRP Ledger processes its first documented flows through that channel, is when the reference case becomes replicable. Every Asia corridor that follows will cite it. 4 catalysts, none of them speculative, all of them on a visible timeline. Here is the part of the map that most people are not reading carefully enough. The window between infrastructure named and infrastructure priced in is the only window that has ever mattered in this space. Right now, the infrastructure has been named in an MOU by SBI Holdings, with DSRV Labs and Ripple Asia co-signing. The XRP Ledger is in the document. RLUSD is in the document. The Japan-Korea corridor is in the document. The price has not moved to reflect what is in that document. That gap between what is documented and what is priced is closing. Not because of speculation, because catalysts on a visible timeline do not stay invisible forever. The question is not whether the gap closes. The question is which side of it you are standing on when it does. Let me leave you with the frame that ties all of this together. Institutions do not name infrastructure they haven't decided to use. That is the rule. This week, SBI Holdings broke that rule. with their legal team's signature on a document that names the XRP Ledger as the candidate core settlement engine for one of Asia's highest volume payment corridors. Coinbase broke the OCC's rule, proving that a crypto-native company can receive a federal trust bank charter, opening the pathway for Ripple's RLUSD to achieve the institutional credentialing it was designed for. KBR broke the unspoken rule, assigning investment-grade credit rating to Ripple Prime, making institutional capital flows into Ripple's infrastructure structure compliant for the first time. And Swift broke its own decade-long narrative by certifying the Treasury platform of the company its former leadership dismissed publicly for years. Rules broke this week, all of them in the same direction. If this breakdown gave you the map that the headlines couldn't, subscribe to the Market Map Crypto before the next one drops. The RLUSD Japan launch analysis is already being built, and when those on-chain numbers go live, you will want to be in the room, not reading a recap 2 days later. Drop one word below, signal or noise. I want to see where this community stands. Stay sharp. Stay structured. The map doesn't lie. Not financial advice. Always conduct your own research.